And then we continue with Danilo Calazans. Danilo, you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Mute my, well, good morning or good afternoon or good night for everybody. My name is Danilo Calazans, and I work at the University, Federal University in Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. And I used to be the head of our boats for training of our students here in the south of Brazil. I was the coordinator for more than 15 years of this. For us, it's a discipline. Our students have to go to the ocean, to the sea, to work with on the oceanographic equipments.
Okay, thank you. Next one, Paula Mcgrane. Paula?
Sorry, Peter. Can you see me there?
We can see the top of your head. Okay.
Okay. Forgive me, I just managed to go through the logon process. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here today. I just about made it, so that's great. My name is Paula Mcgrane. I'm currently the program coordinator of the JONAS project, which addresses underwater noise. I previously ran the Strategic Marine Alliance for Research and Training for 10 years, which was a capacity development program based in Ireland that specifically looked at ship-based training for third-level students. And I've also been involved in the expert group on capacity development for the IOC.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Then we go to Nick Roden.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am a member of the steering group as part of the Ocean Best Practices system. So I'm here as, or part of the system as a biogeochemist. I work at the University of Bergen in Norway. And I also, I guess I have some responsibility for some of the communications and outreach of the OBPS. And so this particular working group was somewhat of an interest to me as well, to see if there's any crossover there.
Yep, thank you. Christine
Nice to meet you all.
Yep, Christine Beam is next.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Actually, I work for Oregon State University with the Regional Class Research Vessel Project as the Marine Science Systems Engineer. And I'm also part of the UNOLS group. We have a tech training subcommittee, and so I'm part of that as well and really interested in this topic.
Okay, thank you. Shannon Hampton.
Hi, so I work at the International Ocean Institute in South Africa, and we run ocean governance training programs and other training programs, including marine spatial planning and other things. And hi, Danilo and everyone.
Thank you. Okay, then the last one at this moment is Sophie Sayav. Sophie,
hi, I'm going to try and share my video. My internet's not great, so I'll probably switch it off.
We see your lampshade.
You see me.
Ah, now
there we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, so I'm Sophie Sayav. I'm the CEO of an organization called the Partnership for Observation of the Global Ocean, POGO. I'm based in Plymouth. And POGO is very active in capacity development and training, particularly for training in ocean observations for early career scientists from developing countries, and also in shipboard training. So I'm glad to be here. Sorry I missed the session on Friday. I was involved with one of the other breakouts. Thank you.
Okay. There's one additional registration, Markup. I'm not sure who Markup is. Ah, yes. I'm sure that's not your name. Can you briefly introduce yourself? Your microphone is off.
Yeah,
You have
hello.
to, yeah?
Yes,
Right.
I am Mario from Gili, Timor-Leste.
Timor-Leste. Oh, yeah. That's far away.
Yeah.
And very late.
Boa noite.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll pass the floor. I mean, I'll ask now Johanna to continue.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Okay, so now it looks like there's many of us, better than last Friday. Thank you very much for joining us in this working group. Our breakout group is on the developing training and guidance materials. And we are very happy to have you in the group. I'm sure that your experiences and your perspectives would be very useful to the discussion. Our aim is to come up with recommendations and to inform the OBPS group on how to provide training on development and dissemination of all BPS and of course its methodologies. And can you hear me well? It's okay? Yeah, okay. So we're looking forward to a very fruitful discussion today. And then tomorrow we're also going to have another session on a different time to accommodate our friends from Asia and Australia. But I'm very happy to see Mario being able to join us tonight, even if it's late already. Well, as a consultative process, we actually asked our participants to share their initial thoughts on some guide questions that we posed in last Friday's session. It was in SurveyMonkey, and we reflected those inputs in the session notes. I would like to share. Claudia, can you share the link of the online document that we can all work on? You are very much welcome to work with us on this online document on the highlights of the discussion. And you may jump in a discussion anytime as you wish. So yeah, just make sure that your name is here. I think this is the page 3 of the document. And so yeah, if your name is not there, kindly add it there so it can be reflected in the report. And for the agenda for today, well, we're done with the introductions, and I'm going to present the focus questions for. Okay, so Claudia has already put in the chat box. You can see in the chat box the link for that online document. I'm sure that some of you haven't had the time to fill in the online form in SurveyMonkey, so you can do it here right now as we go along the discussion. So here are the focus questions, and yeah, just to show you the initial thoughts that were shared by other participants under each question. Here you can add your own inputs in the discussion so that later on we can synthesize your inputs and the outcomes of the discussion. So yeah, the questions that we posed aim to provide us with an understanding and well, to generate inputs from you as the participants in informing. Yes, thank you, Peter, for putting the SurveyMonkey link. You can either fill in there in the SurveyMonkey link or fill in here directly in this online document for the session notes. So, well, going on with the guide questions, the question number 1 actually aim to understand if you have been involved in training programs related to ocean best practices, or if you are aware of such training programs, to understand the nature. And then, of course, some participants have indicated here, I see a lot of answers pointing to the Ocean Teacher Global Academy, the OTGA, POGO, summer schools, there's SCOR, some regional subcommittees and platforms, NOAA, IOS, GOS, university classworks, UNOLS, and I'm not sure if some of the participant who shared about the UNOLS is here. I don't really know who answered this, but if that participant is here, perhaps you can tell us more about that. Is that you, Christine?
Yeah, yeah, that's me. So UNOLS is the University National Oceanographic Laboratory System. So there's a group called RV Tech, which is basically all of the shipboard technicians that participate in a conference all year, as well as they have a listserv and kind of this ongoing community. And so I'm part of a subcommittee that helps with the technician training. And so we're still in like our beginnings of collaborating with the community and trying to figure out exactly what kind of deliverables they want. But I am part of that committee, and we are looking kind of for a platform to host our trainings, as well as a way to kind of expand. So it could be some sort of collaboration we could do with other groups.
Great, great. And this is different from the internship program that you also mentioned. It's another one. It's a different one.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. Okay, and well, we also I also received well, some slides from Maxime. I think that Maxime is here. Are you still here, Maxime?
Yes, I'm here.
Right. So you shared some slides on the data management webinars. Yeah, can you tell us more about that?
Yes, so we're planning to organize some small webinars, 4 in 1 week time. So in 1 week period, each 1 day, just to train scientists on how they should format the data when they go into the field, and give basic tips and tricks that hopefully will make our lives as data managers more livable. But the time, we're probably going to shift it more towards November, because our agendas are getting very full. So the timing is will change.
Right.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to add on that. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, we also wanted to sell this as the idea to the scientists, where data management actually helps them to gain time, helps them to buy time, instead of they have to do extra work, like a lot of extra work to get their data published. So this is one of the messages that we wanted to convey in the training session. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuming and Maxime, yeah, for those information. I think we don't have, well, there was a participant, I think her name, well, okay, she's Alexis, and Alexis is from the Ocean Foundation's International Ocean Acidification Initiative. And last Friday, she was in the breakout session, and she shared about these that she helped in the design and communication of training on best practices related to observing ocean acidification. And yeah, so she shared that initiative. And we also saw some comments underlying the importance of a survey or scoping study related to training and capacity development. And I think that since it's related to this question, there was a survey that OBPS has conducted to actually map to map out the existing trainings and capacity development programs around the world. And there were some preliminary results that are made available, but it's really like raw results. So just to quickly go through with that, can you see the, hold on, I think I have to share this one. Okay, can you see now the PowerPoint in your screen? Okay, so as I was saying, there was a survey that was conducted by OBPS, and these are some of the preliminary results. There's been like 62 respondents from 26 countries, and this, I think, is a graph on the period that these trainings were offered. So as you can see, the top is, it's so difficult to see in this small screen, but the top one is every year. So and the next one is others. It's a one-off activity every month and every second year. So most of these activities, the 144 courses that were surveyed, were offered, I think, as an annual activity. Now the next, right. The next slide is on accessibility. I think that they asked whether this training is offered to anyone, and that's about 60% of the respondents answer that it can be applied, that anyone can apply. It's an open call, and the succeeding ones are just for students and staff of an organization and others. The next one is on the course type. So most of them are short courses. Well, a major part of the pie is on others, but so the next one is on short courses.
Johanna, we're still on slide 1.
Are you sure? Oh, sorry. Can you see the circle one now? No.
No.
Sorry about that. How about now?
Not yet.
Okay, hold on. I think it's not working for the.
Now we have the pie.
Okay, I'm not running the PowerPoint anymore. Just slide by slide. When I run the PowerPoint, I think it doesn't move. So yeah. So now this is the course type. So most of them are offered as short courses, workshops, as part of university degree for bachelor's, for master's and PhD. There's the shipboard experience, distance learning or MOOCs, webinars, online courses, YouTube or Vimeo video, visiting fellowships, and others. Okay, so now this is the value chain, and well, most of these training courses are on data management, followed by sensor use and QA and QC, and product development. And almost 70% of these courses were delivered face-to-face, and about 30% are blended learning, and about 10% were online or distance learning. Now, what this survey, I think, was able to point is the gaps that can be identified using existing EOVs. It's quite difficult to see there, but this presentation will be shared in the folder, so you can check it out when you have time. But based on my based on the results, the gaps that were identified were on SSH, intransient tracer, particulate matter, DOM, and DOC. So these are really like initial results of the survey. But I think that my colleague Claudia here helped in conducting the survey. So if you have any questions, I think that she can help us address that. But yeah, so that is just a quick overview of the OBPS survey on training and capacity development. So let me go back to question 2. All right. So the second question, is regarding the target users of OBPS training. Expectedly, most of the responses indicated students, educators, government officials, regional centers, scientists, data managers, technicians, data scientists. There was an interesting comment on involving high school teachers and the public and the wider public. But there is an important comment, and let me know if the participant who wrote this is here in the session, about differentiating two sets of scientists, those from under-resourced countries and communities, and who have advanced degrees and strong specialization, but they lack equipment. And the other group is scientists that are forced to be generalists as they have enormous portfolios. I think it's interesting to hear from this. Are you here? This is I think it's interesting to hear how we can address the differing needs of these two sets of scientists. And there's also may I ask maybe a show of hands from the icon. You can see the icon in the Zoom window where you can raise your hand. Maybe a raise of hand of those who are ECOPs, early career ocean professionals in this session. Okay, we have Yiming. Oh, so only Yiming is from the ECOP circle. Okay, Yiming, well, part of this consultative process is to engage the different levels of communities we have here. And of course, it's very important for us to also hear about the perspectives of the early career ocean professionals who are in the front lines of this initiative. So yeah, Yiming, if I can ask you on how do you envision the kinds of trainings from OBPS that would be relevant to your professional works or needs?
Sorry, do you mind to repeat the question?
Yeah, I mean, because I think that it's important to understand from the perspective of an early career ocean professional. How do you view the importance? How do you envision the training activities from OBPS, and that would be relevant to your professional work or needs?
All right. So for the context, I'm a data manager. So I manage and talking about diversity data. So I envision the training to train me so that I can also train the people who are going to the field what is the best practice to manage their data, what is the best way, how to guide them to reduce human errors or errors in general in data generation, data transfer, and data publications, for example. So this is one thing that I can think of. And I myself is also really interested to learn about what they do in the field, because it's difficult for me to put myself into their shoes if I never been to the field, so which is the case now. So so I can totally imagine that data management is very complex for them, and the few works they are doing is complex to me. So there's this mismatch that I hope that it can be bridged by having this training and guidance from OBPS. I think that's all for me now. I hope it's relevant.
Yeah. Yes, of course. Thank you very much. I think you've already identified one of that mismatch as one of the obstacles or the bottlenecks in the process. But yeah, and I'm also happy to hear that you envision yourself as a trainer. So the training that would be provided would be more of like a training for trainers, opportunities for early career ocean professionals like you.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so moving on. As I've said, please feel free to jump in the discussion anytime. So the third question is on the capacity development methodologies. We asked the participants for their initial thoughts on what capacity development methodologies can promote the wider use of OBPS. And what we found from the responses are mostly point to online training or online courses. And I think that the preference is due to the cost and accessibility, and also because it can reach wider reach of participants. As you know, for capacity development, the most effective instruments for reaching as many as possible or in the forms of training, workshops, conference, seminars, webinars. And I think that this is also given, is also due to the current situation with COVID, that the virtual environment is, I think, more famous nowadays. Yes, Peter?
No, I just wanted to ask participants, because that's an interesting conclusion that many people are saying, well, we really like the online courses, because often we hear from students that they prefer a hybrid model, because pure online doesn't really allow the same interactivity, and of course it doesn't allow direct interaction with the teacher if there are problems or questions. So I wanted to hear from participants what are their views on this.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Maybe I can provide a few comments. Yeah, I'm also quite surprised by this response, and maybe it is a sign of what we're going through with COVID at the moment, and people are thinking a lot more about what they can do remotely, because I think previously I've never really heard anyone say, oh, I'd much rather attend a course remotely than in person. And I think also it depends a lot on the topic. I mean, if we're talking about best practices in, carbonate chemistry or something, it's very difficult / impossible to do that remotely, because the participants may not, even if they could do the training virtually in their own lab watching someone on the screen providing the, you know, the protocols, they would need all the right equipment and the right consumables. I don't even know if that's kind of been done before. I'd be interested to hear if anyone has attended a virtual laboratory session. But I think that would be the biggest challenge in ocean best practices.
May I talk? May I say my opinion?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It's for me as a teacher in this area, it's very important for the students go to a boat, go to a research boat, and do everything. They have to do. They have to touch the equipment. They have to see the equipment. They have to manage the equipment. This is very important for them. And this, of course, they just going to do if they go abroad. That's important for them. Online, if you send a video, for instance, they never go to touch the equipment. In my opinion, they have to go abroad always to allow them to do the proper job. I mean, if they are doing something wrong, the teacher on board, the research on board have to go to them and say, you are doing wrong. The proper way to do it is in that way. This is, for me, is important to say. They have to go on board. That's why you have now 4 floating tutorial ships we call laboratory. They have to go there, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great point. I think I saw Federico Antonio raising his hands.
Sure, thank you. And just following the Danilo Calazans said a few minutes, and that's exactly where the ocean best practice would also enter in, because it is not for high-level scientists and observers and data managers, but also for students and equipment operators. And then, when they're about to start for the first time operating equipment, it is very important they have a procedure list, how to do it properly in order to learn more and in order to avoid damage the equipment. And this is a very important rule for best practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Federico. Anyone else would like to?
Yeah, could I just come in there, Johanna? I would see the online section of this as being very much kind of complementary. So following on from what Daniela and Federico said there, you know, someone is deploying a certain piece of equipment, say something as simple as a Secchi disc or a plankton net, that they will be able to access videos that would act as standard operational protocols, but be more accessible from the point of view that it's a nice video. You can see what how someone is deploying it, you know, what the protocol is associated with that, and that this acts to have a suite of online videos that can support people, whether it's in the field or in the laboratory, is a really useful tool to have. It is like having a suite of standard operational protocols, but ones that you can watch, so to speak. In terms of providing courses by it, I mean, I think when you look at some of the courses that have been produced, specifically just online courses like the Ocean MOOC, that was done so well, that courses like that are fantastic and can be accessible by anyone, not just scientists, but the public, etc. So there really is a use there for online, as we've all found out recently during COVID, and also for blended learning courses. But obviously, there are certain things like going out on a vessel that cannot be replicated, but to have those suite of online videos that can support you in what you're doing out in the field is really, really important.
Thank you, Paula. Yes, so I think, next is Claudia. And after Claudia, I think I also want to ask Ms. Christine Beam for her opinion, since you're doing training for technicians on ships. So this would be a very relevant area for you. Claudia?
Yes, thanks, Johanna. I would like to build up a bit on what Paula was mentioning, and just a quick, I recall attending the OBPS workshop face-to-face last year, and when we discussed the possibility of using online training or online tools for providing OBPS training, the group was very skeptical about it, and I'm very happy to see or to sense that the situation is evolving into being a bit more keen on using online tools. I definitely agree that online is not the holy grail, and it's not the solution for all the problems in the world, especially currently. Although perhaps because of the situation now, online may indeed be one solution amongst others. But regarding what Paula just mentioned, indeed, I think the blended approach is probably the best for the kind of training we are talking about. Indeed, it's a very important experience to go on board a ship. Experience feeling seasick is very important. I know what it is, and I don't miss it, I must admit. But another thing that we could explore is the use of virtual reality in training, precisely to fill this gap when we cannot go on board, for instance. And it's something that is only being started to be explored in a very specific niches. I know that IAEA uses it quite a bit for its training because it's so specific. Why not OBPS as well, especially under the conditions that we are living now, where traveling and attending face-to-face courses is practically impossible. That was my main contribution.
Thank you, Claudia, for that. Is Christine here? Yeah, Christine.
Yep, yeah, I'm here. So I just kind of want to reiterate what other folks have been saying, where, you know, there's nothing that really beats the hands-on training. When that is possible, I think we should go with hands-on face-to-face training. But in the age of COVID, as well as just traveling and people's schedules, I think that, you know, a hybrid or online course can be supplementary. One caveat that I would make sure that I add when talking to the folks here is that if you're going to be kind of making a lot of videos for online training, there should be a way to download those videos for the technicians or scientists that are going to be at sea. just because there's usually limited bandwidth and internet access when you're at sea. So just like being able to download those videos and or just having some sort of page like documentation that goes along with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Well, yeah, thanks for your comments. I think that the comment from Federico and Danilo earlier somehow touches on the, you know, when we do training, we usually the learning by doing approaches employ these pedagogical principles in experiencing experiencing the thing, you know, for you to learn and to have a more retention of the knowledge and the skills that is being passed on. But as others have already pointed out, given the challenges in the situation right now, and perhaps also touching on the cost and resources and accessibility of face-to-face or physical hands-on training, yeah, we're looking at for the, at least I think for the meantime, the online mode as the most how to say, one of the most effective methodology. I wonder, Claudia raised virtual reality as one of the technology that we can employ, but I wonder if the challenges, you know, could be addressed by using this virtual reality mode. Has there been, Claudia, has there been like studies on this training programs that are employing virtual reality?
Yes, there have been quite a few examples like this, and they are used mainly in situations where the real situation is either too expensive or even ethically not possible to perform as a training on its own. The example of the International Atomic Agency is, for instance, they need to train technicians on how to perform activities, on how to handle all kinds of different scenarios on a nuclear power plant, and this is done using virtual reality. That's one example. And there are other examples, similar examples. For instance, drills in offshore oil platforms. There's a fire in an oil platform. How do you train the staff on how to deal in a situation like that? They don't do it in a real case scenario. They do it using virtual reality. So these are some examples of how virtual reality can be used in training.
All right. Okay, thank you, Claudia. Is there any more comment on this specific item? Because I think I would like to pause here, as the point of discussion is quite related to the to what my colleague will be presenting in this session. I asked Claudia to make a brief introduction about the Ocean Teacher Global Academy for teaching Ocean Teacher Global Academy. Is that right, Claudia? Did I get it? OTGA, right. I always confuse it with the TOGA, you know, the one that got away. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so maybe Claudia can give us now her presentation on OTGA as a training platform of OBPS. Okay.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you, Johanna.
Claudia, you're on mute. Hello.
Okay, sorry for that. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce the Ocean Teacher Global Academy. I know that many of you around the table or in this virtual room know already quite a bit about Ocean Teacher. So Ocean Teacher is an IOC, or is one of the IOC's capacity development tools. So it contributes to the implementation of the IOC capacity development strategy. And we are based at the IOD project office in Belgium. We started this year the second phase of Ocean Teacher. So I will not make that many comments on the previous phase, just a little bit on what is the rationale, what is the concept of the Ocean Teacher Global Academy. What we want to do is to share training resources and expertise in a coordinated way. And how do we do this? On one hand, we established a network of regional training centers and specialized training centers around the globe. Therefore, these cover the different regions and their specificities and needs of each region, including delivering training in the languages that are relevant to the regions and using case studies that are relevant to the regions. And then we have a common e-learning platform which uses Moodle as the learning management system. This allows that all the training resources, the contents, the course outlines, pretty much everything that is used and shared during a training course is kept in a single platform that, as I mentioned, can use different languages depending on the needs and on the audience of the training course. This platform has been used until now mostly to support face-to-face training courses. And in the past, we've started using slowly as also to promote blended learning. This year, we've already organized, since lockdown started, we've already organized a few training courses in an online context only. As I mentioned, the Ocean Teacher Global Academy is now starting a second phase, which develops on the previous phase. And these are actually the objectives that were outlined last year. So before anyone could guess what 2020 was going to bring us. But the main key objectives of the Ocean Teacher Global Academy that will be running until 2023 are to develop a portfolio of packaged courses that are delivered that are ready to be delivered on demand, and that will cover all the training needs of IOC, but also of other UN and non-UN partners. Continue to deliver face-to-face courses. Sorry. I would say now as possible, or as soon as it's possible back again, but also having online and blended courses. We've just finished the process of selection of the new pool of training centers, and we will now have 16 regional or specialized training centers around the world, covering pretty much all the regions. We will be focusing on the training needs towards the implementation of the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, And of course, more specifically, but not only the SDG 14, we want to facilitate capacity development within the framework of the UN Ocean Decade, and further develop and implement the quality procedures and maintain the ISO certification that we currently have as a learning services provider. And that is it. And if you have any questions on Ocean Teacher, I will be very happy to address those.
Thank you, Claudia. I think we have in the chat box, we have a comment from Mr. Federico Antonio Saraiva. Yes, Mr. Federico?
Well, so it's just to announce, it would be sufficient to put it in the chat, but it was just to announce that the Universidade Federal de Santa Catarina, and Universidade de la República, Uruguay, have jointly submitted a proposal for a regional training center under the umbrella of OTGHO. Thank you.
Thank you, Federico, and I believe you may be aware already that it has been accepted, and we will start working in 2 weeks.
Wow, congratulations. Well, yeah, Claudia, well, I was in the other group earlier, the working group on ethics have come up with a recommendation on creating an online course on applied ethics on marine sciences. And I wonder, how would the process, you know, what's the start of the process? I understand that they have some existing materials or course content for this kind of offering. And they would like to propose that this be hosted in the OTGA. Can you let us know how the process would be? Do they submit a proposal? Is that how it works?
Thanks, Johanna. Great to hear. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to join any other working groups. The process is to contact Ocean Teacher, either through the general email address ioc.training@unesco.org, contact myself and Greg Reed, or just contact directly Peter Pissierssens, and you will forward that to us to follow up. The main process is, if someone wants to explore the possibility of using Ocean Teacher as a platform for a training course, okay, it's contacting us. We will be sharing our template forms for course and lesson plans, and these will be submitted to the steering group for approval. So as I mentioned on my presentation, we follow rather strict guidelines for our courses, because we are ISO certified, and we need to keep all the steps documented and make sure that we have minimum criteria and quality of the contents that we deliver, that we facilitate. So that is, in a nutshell, the process.
Okay, thank you. I think that we can reflect that in the report, so that you know, the interface between our working groups would be reflected in that. Okay, so can we go on with the next? All right. Moving ahead, the next question that you would like to discuss is what are the existing tools, resources, or platforms that can be utilized for training on the development and dissemination of ocean best practices. And I think that the presentation of Claudia somehow addressed this question as one of the platforms for training on OBPS. Right. Some other some of the key comments here also point out. Thank you, Peter, for highlighting those tools, videos, creative tools, narratives, perhaps storytelling is also something that is creative. And to be honest, for developing countries, this is something that they employ when they create and develop their best practices. There's some mention of toolkits, and this is very interesting because there was some discussion about users having different needs, having different conditions, and so toolkits seem to be a good starting point on, you know, like an entry point for users. And yeah, there's like manuals from manufacturers, handbooks from individual research ships, and what else did I miss? Yeah, online courses, of course. But what it's actually highlighting here is it really depends on the users or the audience or the participants of your training. Regarding toolkits, perhaps whoever commented the importance of toolkits here is in the session. So I wonder, how do you envision developing toolkits as a valuable material in an e-learning platform? Have you had use or encountered toolkits from other training materials which provide like templates to get started or incorporated in the platform as to define the entry points for the users? Or any other tools or resources or platforms that you think would be can be utilized for training? Actually, going back to the virtual reality point earlier, I think that it could be a recommendation on how we can create a best practice compendium on this subject. Oh, sorry, Peter. Yes, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I mean, just to add a little bit on the toolkits. In fact, the Ocean Teacher Global Academy started a very long time ago, 20 years ago, as a toolkit. It was related to data management, and it basically had open source software tools for data managers. So there has been something like that done before. It became quite large after a while, and then later on we started documenting courses that then make use of those toolkits. So maybe that is also something we can look into again. The identification and making available of open source but tried out tools, software tools, that are related to ocean best practices.
Thank you, Peter, for sharing. I think that is one successful story of how from a toolkit, the OTGA has expanded into this platform. That yeah, I think that's a good recommendation to look at that experience, and perhaps we can do this again for the open source software tools. Are there any other comments from the group? Yes, Yiming, Miss Yiming.
Is it okay if I have a comment from the ocean teacher?
Yes,
from
yes,
the previous
please.
question. So I was also in the ethics working group session just now. So I was just wondering if there's any plan, or if ocean teacher actually recommends the trainers to include an ethics chapter in the courses proposed when they review the courses. Could this be an idea or a good idea?
Okay, if I can reply, if I understand correctly what you mean ethics in this context, in fact, this is addressed mainly in during our research data management course that has been organized several times in different training centers. But I am not, because I was not following that working group, I am not sure it's exactly what the same thing. But what we address is mainly ethics in using data, the FAIR principles, and so on.
Yeah, I think that's what I was asking for. But probably there will be like more other application as well. Maybe Johanna, you can fill it in.
In ethics in working with live animals, which is something very specific. But those of us who have worked or need to work with live animals, especially protected species, it's yet another area that needs to be looked after, and it's not part of the regular program pretty much anywhere.
Yes, thank you, Yiming. Peter?
Yeah, I was just thinking, for example, nowadays more and more pinnipeds are used to glue a piece of equipment and a GPS to them. Well, I guess that also raises some ethical questions. So I don't know if those issues are being discussed or thought about, and indeed it might be a good topic for a course in Ocean Teacher as well, related to ocean best practices.
Yeah, I can add on to Peter's point. So probably when the trainers are preparing for the courses, or when ocean teachers are reviewing the courses, like how would they know, like their courses actually have in what is the word? How do they know if their courses are actually related to some ethical questions or issues that they might touch upon that maybe they are not aware of it? I'm wondering if this is appropriate to bring up for discussions.
Johanna, there's a comment from Jay in the chat room also.
Hold on. Okay. Okay, I found it.
Maybe Jay want to elaborate?
Right. Yes, Jay, please.
Thank you, Peter. I was wondering if courses taught in different parts of the world and in different languages, etc., may have the similar content, but in fact they conflict. And this is the same problem with best practices or recommended practices. How do we converge in the community to decide if one is better or what should be recommended and what type of activity?
Thank you, Jay. That's an interesting question. Claudia, have you had experience on this before?
Not necessarily past experience, but the question on decide what is the course to be endorsed. For IOC specific courses, we will always consult with our colleagues that are experts in a given program, and they will be the ones endorsing the contents of a course to be delivered.
So Jay, is that what your question was about, Jay?
Yeah, I think that Claudia made a very interesting statement that they use experts to assess the content of a course. And that, of course, leads me to ask, I'm developing a course in a location that doesn't have a lot of experts. How do I access experts to review my course, to give comments, to help me actually improve it?
I am not entirely sure that scenario exists, but within Ocean Teacher, what we're trying to promote is that we develop a course in a given language per default or by default. The course will be developed in most cases in English, and then this course, which will be like the skeleton, the outline to be followed, can then be translated into different languages as needed. That's our approach.
Can I add something there?
Yes, Peter.
Because I think Jay has raised an interesting point, because the way Ocean Teacher works, the training center, well, there are certain courses that are initially developed in English, and then sometimes they are translated into other languages and taught in a number of other centers. But sometimes also the centers themselves will develop a course that may be in English or another language. And well, there may be a concern sometimes that there is a quality issue. And if that is raised, then we have to find a way to deal with that. Now, fortunately, many of the IOC programs and projects, they have groups of experts or steering groups, international groups of experts or steering groups associated with them. And so they can always review those courses and then give some advice if something isn't what it should be. Yeah, so we do have that possibility. It's just, I don't think we have used it so far. In the case of IUD, many of the courses have been developed within the, let's say, ecosystem of IUD with experts from within that community. And then they've sort of been distributed across the network. But increasingly now with the new structure also of OTGA, I think we will see that more and more of these training centers, be they in Latin America, Africa, or Asia, will start also developing their own courses. And so I guess we will then have to have some sort of oversight, agreed oversight mechanism to make sure there is no issue. And of course, also then if you say, well, what is the best course? Well, I think that's a bit more tricky because a course may be appropriate in one region, being taught in a certain way, and in another region it may be in a different way, with a focus on different aspects, depending on local capabilities, on needs. So I think you will get different flavors of the same dish in different parts of the world. Claudia, you agree with that?
Yes, yes, that's definitely have we been functioning and how we are planning how to work from now on.
Yeah. Peter, that's a very, very important statement. And maybe we can take the next step. Is there a best practice or a method or a recognized method for reviewing and recognizing quality courses?
Claudia?
Well, that's why I refer the ISO certification. We went through a very long and I would say somewhat painful process precisely to adapt to comply with international standards regarding delivering non-academic training courses, because this is our niche. We're not replacing universities. We are working mainly on continuous professional development, and therefore the way it works is slightly different. The quality, of course, has to be ensured, and this is why we decided a few years ago to apply to comply with the ISO certification. And this is why we've developed template forms, namely for the course plans and the lessons or modules in our training courses, so that we can track and trace everything and make sure that the best contents are delivered, and that there's no training courses that promise delivering something and in the end they don't, that's not exactly what is delivered during a training course.
So to some extent you could then say, well, if a course has been planned, implemented, teacher qualifications have been documented, the quality of the course also reviewed by the teachers, of the teachers, and also by the students. If that has followed these standard protocols, let's say, then you can say, well, that is then maybe the best kind of course. If the content is the same, because this course has followed this ISO protocol. Back to Johanna.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, thank you, Peter. So yeah, moving ahead, the next question is on what are the best practices in e-learning? Are there best practices on e-learning that can contribute to an effective and successful training on OBPS? I think that given the environment right now of virtual meetings and online mode, this can inform effective strategy in developing training on OBPS. Is there any best practices that you know on e-learning or you've encountered? Yes, Yiming?
Sorry, I'm so excited. I don't know what really are the best practices on e-learning, but I have an idea, so I'm just throwing it out. So I'm not even a trainer myself, but I'm just throwing it out. So I'm wondering, like, if there is a way to trace the courses on how it evolved. For example, I have these courses about data management according to the standard, but the standard has evolved. And then I have a new training about the new standard. Does it make sense? So that people can actually follow the course of evolution of the courses.
I think that's a very interesting point. It's well, well, because standards evolve, right? So yeah, so yeah, anyone who can address Mingying's question? Is there a way to trace courses on how they evolved?
Well, Claudia, I mean, in Ocean Teacher, you already have a number of courses that have been developed as early as 2015 and that then have been revised. I don't think they are public anymore, but you still have them in the system, right?
Yeah, well, I was keeping a bit silent because I'm not sure I understood the question. But indeed, what we've been doing in Ocean Teacher, in fact, there are courses, at least back from 2010, 2011, which we considered that some of the contents were already obsolete. So we kind of shut them down. We don't make it public anymore because some of the information there is not up to date anymore. So what we try to do is to keep available to the public, and here I have a little asterisk, keep available to the public the most up-to-date version of a course or of a given content. The asterisk I was referring to is we need to trace, to track the people who follow our courses, and therefore when I mention public, is the courses are always free and available to anyone who is interested, but we request people to give their name and their email address. That's as far as what we ask from people that check training courses on Ocean Teacher.
Claudia, actually, I also have a question. Sorry. So I wonder, like, of course, okay, so once you're done running the courses in OTGA, are there any like post-training or post-course assessment or evaluation from the participants? And to what extent are they reflected in the revision, if there are, of the course?
All courses that we organize have a standard feedback survey that we ask all the participants to fill. This feedback survey is anonymous, and it's actually part of the requirements for certification, is that we get feedback from our audience, and this feedback is used for continuous improvement, namely of a future edition of the course or an adaptation of the course, depending on the comments that we receive.
Okay.
I don't know if you had any other question. Perhaps I jumped in a bit too fast.
Yes, Yiming.
Oh dear, here I am again.
You're always welcome.
So I was like wondering, would it make sense to, or could this be a good idea to actually link the courses to the protocols, for example, on OBPS? Because so if people think that, oh, I'm going to use these protocols for my experiments or for my fieldworks. Oh, wow, there's actually a course on this. Isn't it? I think it could be valuable. Would it be a good idea?
Yes, Dot.
Okay, the dot seals it.
Awesome.
That is a very clear position from Claudia, sealing the answer with a dot. Yes, Yiming, is that fine with you, but I think that's a good that's a good way to put it. Like if you're looking for protocols and there's existing courses, then that's the best way to link it. The question I think there is, would all people know to I mean to refer it to OTGA and look for these courses if they're existing according to their.
That's our job, isn't it?
Right. So I think
I
that's
could have advertised it.
that's where the dissemination and the promotion should come into play. Okay.
Johanna, there are 2 comments in the chat, one from Elva and one from Abbie.
Oh, why is the chat box not showing?
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, yeah. Well, my comment comes from my own experience in at the Institute of Marine Sciences at UNAM, and that we received not funds directly, but we were required continuously to deliver those teaching courses and capacity building for 3 major topics: HAPS, ocean acidification, and sea level change, or coastal observatories for sea level change, that included as well monitoring with sensors, including temperature and others. So this went in the Western Atlantic region, and many of these nations received as donation the equipment and the training, and it was our scientists that were training these people. Either they came to Mexico or the scientists went down to another country, like for instance, El Salvador, I think was one, and the other was Panama. And they were training people from laboratories so that they put together the guidelines together, and they maintain those guidelines sort of like in best practices, changing according to the best practices, that everybody would make an intercalibrated information. And this is the EIA, the International Agency of the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Elva.
You're welcome. And I know that there are some courses open for the next at least 2 or 3 years, because they plan them in advance.
And these courses are held, I mean,
it depends which one, but for instance, some of them people receive funds to move and hold the meeting presentially in one specific site. For instance, our institute in the Pacific Coast, because we have 4 different labs. So in that lab, they would take that course. Others occurred in the Caribbean directly, and others, our scientists, the ones that taught the courses, traveled to Panama or to El Salvador, I think, or Nicaragua. I'm not quite sure. But they traveled to deliver that course there, where the other scientists, our technicians and doctoral students met. And they were training capacity building for Central America and in the region, in the Caribbean region, Western Atlantic.
Right, that's very interesting.
Yep.
Thank you. Claudia, I think Abbie has a question about OTGA. How are limitations to participants by institutions addressed?
Yeah.
If it's open to everyone.
I'm not sure I follow entirely the question, but I will explain what is our default procedure.
Claudia, can I address?
Yes,
Hello?
Abbie.
What I mean is, this is from my own experience. You find that some OTGA courses are delivered in countries, and you mentioned that it's open for participants provided you want to be part of the process, but then you find it's limited. You might apply, but you're restricted from being part of the learning process. So how is this issue addressed? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, the quality of the audio is not so good, at least not as I received. But
Can I repeat again?
let me try to explain to see if
okay.
What I meant is that the training course contents on the Ocean Teacher e-learning platform are open to anyone. That we just request the email, well, the name and the email address. That's one part. For the face-to-face courses that we've organized, it's not that straightforward. What we do is we make an open call for applications for the region at stake. If the training course is taking place somewhere in Latin America or in Africa, the priority is for people coming from that region. That's one of the starting points. Well, we publish the background criteria, what are the main requisites that people need to have. And then we go through a selection process, usually with 3 referees, including someone from the regional training center and the main lecturer, at least. And we then rank these people. We try to make sure that there is a good geographic distribution within the region at stake, and also pay attention to gender balance. So this is the default general way of going through the selection process for face-to-face courses. Being online, we are adapting slightly because things works, of course, naturally work a little bit different. Still, the online training courses that we are now organizing, they still have, we're not organizing MOOCs, we're not doing a massive online open courses. And we organize a training course, like we were going to have the quality management framework in a couple of weeks. There's still a limited number of places available for the course, because the course will be, even though online, there will be tutors available during the duration of the course. And we have a limited number of tutors, of teaching assistants. So this implies a limited number of participants attending the course. When the course is closed, that course that runs live for 2, 3, 4 weeks, depends on the subject, then the course is made available as a self-paced course for anyone who wants to follow the course. But in that case, there will be no guidance from any tutors. That's the main difference.
Okay. Hello. Okay, thank you, Claudia and Abbie. I think my job is to watch time as well. We still have two questions left. So I think for the next 5-10 minutes, we can wrap up these points. But the next question is actually in connection to considering OBPS is an evolving system that fosters collaboration, consensus building, and innovation, and providing coordinated and global access. The next question asks, how can OBPS ensure that the process reaches across regions and cultures, and that non-scientific communities and practitioners are engaged in the creation, adoption, and employment of best practices? So most of the comments we got here point to the participation of various stakeholders, citizen science initiatives, involvement of NGOs, scientific societies, engagement of the public, community outreach, youth, the role of youth, and dialogue with communities so as to understand what their needs. but I think the two interesting comments here highlight the need to co-design best practices with end users. And the other comment is that the bridge to reach the community is through our colleagues in existing communities, bringing the communities and inviting them to work with and share their best practices and assist them to develop. And then we assist them to develop and submit to OBPS. What are your views in this? During the plenary, we have some good discussion on how do we bring in regarding inclusion and local knowledge and indigenous communities, the non-scientific or the fishermen in the process. And I think this is also related to the point of how do we fully engage when developing countries or early career researchers, for example, don't have the resources that they need. How can they be engaged in the process? I think this also touches on some of the main challenges besides funding, technical issues and resources. And yeah, so it's perhaps we can hear from our other colleagues who have something to share.
This is Elva, and I could contribute by saying that we need to make that, how to say, we need that nations have the capacities, the technological, the remote sensing or the internet capacities to receive information. Because for instance, some things can be done presentially, but others require connectivity so that they have access to the best literature, to the documents, to materials that can be used for educational purposes and capacity building locally under the conditions they have. I believe that many of the nations, even if they don't have the highest technology to endeavor and to measuring with sensors and everything, they are very creative. And a couple of things will be created in the next years just by the use of a cell phone or basic, just by having the capacity of knowing what they have to measure and what is expected.
Yes, thank you, Elva. Yeah, I think, yes, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at the responses we already received, I think the words that jump out is community engagement, outreach, citizen science. Now the question there is who at the national level will, for example, research institutions in countries do the outreach then to non-scientific communities, including certain NGOs, and in that way involve them in the co-design of best practices. Is that something that is realistic? That's a question I have for the participants.
Yeah, given your experience perhaps in working with national research institutions, what is the entry point perhaps? How do they do outreach?
So, Johanna, this is Jay Perlman. I'd like to turn to Sophie and Pogo and ask how they address the broadening of the outreach and training from the perspective of their organization.
Hi, Jay. I'm not sure I understood the question entirely. How do we broaden out the outreach? Can you rephrase it a little bit?
Yes, Peter asked a question about co-design for, I would broaden it to training in general, and in particular in the community outreach area. And I thought that was a very important thought moving forward. And I'm wondering how POGO addresses not only here are the training courses and quality and experts, but how do you, if you do enter co-design of the training and the communications and other things?
Okay.
Sophie, can I add something to that? Because
yes, please help.
no, for example, so far we've been talking, of course, about training courses that are designed and developed by what we call experts, by scientific, by researchers. But if we're saying, okay, we also want to take into account non-scientific communities and practitioners, and of course also indigenous communities, how do we validate, how do we bring them into the design of training activities that they can contribute to as teachers?
Okay. I know I guess I'm struggling to answer the question because POGO traditionally has been dealing also with experts mostly, and you know, we're starting to talk about, as are a lot of people, you know, how do we bring in indigenous communities and so on, but it's not something that we actually have experience in so far.
Is it something we should think about? Because Claudia, I don't think we in Ocean Teachers, I don't think we have thought about that. Having courses developed by the usual suspects.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's definitely something we could talk about.
Yeah, but I also we're very much driven, needs driven based, and until now that has not happened. Perhaps it will be in the near future, but until now this has never really been a request from our member states and from our communities.
But on the other hand, for example, in the decade, there is plenty of reference to indigenous people. And we've also seen that during the global conferences on the decade. It's something that we have never done, but it's clearly something that we've been instructed to bear in mind now. And I think the regional training facilities and the specialized training facilities in countries, I'm sure they have contacts with non-scientific communities, NGOs, and through those NGOs, I think often the indigenous communities can be reached. So maybe it's something we need to organize some outreach, and that then also links to ocean best practices, trying to find out what practices those communities use and have been using for various things, and that we could then also, and then we could start that kind of collaboration. I see two comments. One from, well, he says Markup here, but I know that's not his name. And then one from Elva. So shall we start with Markup? Can you speak?
Yeah, hello?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, the most important when we try to engage community, the important things that need to be considered is how can we find out a champion, because they will extent what kind of information they want to transmit to others, because we want to the best practices will be adopted broadly into their community as a best practices. Because as you know, in our current situation, like in Timor-Leste, there are so many non-scientific communities like NGOs who conduct a certain training, but not effective. So the important one is how can we trust, or how can we involve the people? But mostly there are women who very curious to know and want to extend what they have been learning. So I would say the best practices will be good when we engage many women there. So as a kind of women mainstreaming as in our key of success. I think that's thank you.
Thank you. Elva?
Yes, hi. Peter, actually my comment is the same, the one that I mentioned before to Claudia. And it is basically that we need to provide with access to technology and infrastructure to these local communities and to traditional knowledge holders in the coast. Because at the end, we are going to also would like to engage them in capacity building to learn from their best practices as well. They may probably have best practices, and they have also data that are needed in databases. And at the end, this dialogue between the local communities and the traditional knowledge holders needs to be very respectful, because they may probably have their own idiosyncrasy about wanting to use their data more than other data. So we have to be, when talking about capacity development and engaging traditional knowledge holders, we have to consider that they don't have basic technology sometimes. Basic technology means electricity, power, internet, and we have to build that from scratch in many locations. It's just as simple as if we want to evaluate biodiversity, marine biodiversity, and we are far away from the closest village, we may not have how to freeze or how to preserve sometimes the specimens for the different techniques that we would like to make. And I think that's where we have to start building from when we think about capacity development and best practices. Also know what they mean, what they follow as best practices for their own knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to say in terms of information technology.
Yes.
It is of course a problem that in many countries people don't have computers. And when you say they don't have internet access, well, except usually everybody has a cell phone. And we've seen, for example, in India, there was a very interesting project where, as everybody has a cell phone, the National Center for Ocean Information, they provided content to fishermen simply through their cell phones. So often you need to try and make sure that the way you provide your content is appropriate to the user. So it means we need to make sure that our content is accessible, is readable through cell phone.
Yeah, I fully agree. I was thinking regionally on places like Cuba and other smaller islands. Thank you.
May I add a couple of words on this? What Peter was mentioning regarding like using just a smartphone for training to convey some training. In fact, there are, and here I'm going to use the two magic words, best practices, on how to put together training courses, to deliver training courses for low bandwidth audiences, like putting together like lightweight training course contents precisely to get to those audiences. And I think that's something really interesting to explore, and we should always keep in mind. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is leave no one behind, and paying attention to or avoiding the use of platforms that not everyone can access. The example is YouTube. And I know that YouTube is the preferred platform to put short videos and tutorials on how to pretty much everything, but not everyone around the globe can access YouTube. So I would like make a call to don't forget that we should also think of conveying this kind of information using channels that are accessible to everyone. And I stop.
Yeah, Johanna, there was Shannon who had a few comments.
Thank you, Claudia. That was important.
Well, I was just saying that we can help put you in touch with some people in South Africa, and there are NGOs obviously everywhere that can probably help. So I think this is just something that requires a bit of work and communication. But then I also said that it's not something we're involved in, that Abbie is an app that we use in South Africa with small-scale fishers to track their fishing catch and costs. And anyway, it's something to look at. It's a data, it doesn't use any data, it's zero rated, and it's been developed in consultation with the local small scale fishers, and it's actually all open source. So it's not for training, but it's a model that could be useful in other places too.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, I think it's an important point to note how NGOs and other similar organizations can reach, you know, mostly they're working at the grassroots level. So they're actually very much connected to the stakeholders at the ground. I think that quite related to Shannon's point on NGO, and relating that to what Mario earlier has shared on developing a champion from the community. In his case, I think it's the women in their villages and their local government chiefs who are actually very much involved in project activities, and their perspectives are always included in the consultation process. So that I think is a very useful lesson for this discussion. Well, we're running out of time, but I think that if I may, for the last question, ask about somehow we already touched on the challenges, and I think that one of the other questions that has to be covered in our session is to think about what now. So from now, I mean, after this workshop, there's some questions about what are the plans on keeping this working group going. And I think that there are some opportunities that for networking or partnership that can be developed from this session, especially those who are interested to be involved perhaps in further development of training on ocean best practices. I would like to know your views on this. Also going back to the earlier point of we have NGOs here, we have representatives from higher education institutions, national research institutions. So yeah, what are your perspective in this post training, post workshop plans? I think one point there is the plan to submit to the OTGA some proposals for the training course, online courses for the OTGA. Yes, Yiming?
Yay, here I am again.
We really need that.
So I totally see like there's a lot of potential collaboration with the data and information working group, as well as the ethics and the ethics working group. So I'm wondering if maybe we should also keep this conversation going. To I think there's a joint session together with those two working group. Am I right?
There was there was a proposal for that. Right, in the earlier in the data and information working group, they also touched upon how the SOPs can be tapped or developed as into training opportunities. It's a way of knowledge transfer, knowledge sharing to other countries who are not involved in this initiative. So I think there would be some discussions, interfacing with the other two working groups.
I think it's really interesting because I learned so much about things that it could be related to data management, knowledge transfer that could be available for both two other working groups as well. So I think we should definitely bring up this topic again in the joint session. Thank you.
Thank you, Yiming. Any other suggestions or contributions to this point? It's actually
can
yes.
I say something? This is
I'm
Sophie.
sorry. Yes, Sophie. Yes.
Thank you. It's just a general comment, really, that we should try to link up with other groups, and even with the same group that was kind of established. Well, not really established, but the effort that was conducted at the last OBP workshop in December last year. It feels a bit like this is kind of a slightly different membership. It's not really following on from what that group was doing, and I think there's a risk of starting something new and then losing momentum and not having any follow-up. And there's obviously the Ocean Info Hub and the everything that's happening under that in terms of capacity development needs to link to this, as well as a follow-up to Ocean Obps 19. There's been a group preparing a prospectus on capacity development that's being considered as a contribution to the decade. And again, there's some overlap, but it's a slightly different membership in that group. So I just think we need to try and tie all these different strands together.
It's a very good point, Sophie. Thank you. I think that Claudia is a part of the working group in the last workshop. So maybe Claudia, you can help us with.
Yeah, well, regarding Sophie, it's a good comment indeed. And I recall at least 2 people, Allela and Rachel, who were part of that group. We were around the same, indeed, in the same working group last year. And they're not here at this moment because I hope they are sleeping right now. But this Johanna is doing a fantastic around-the-clock job because she will be running this workshop again in just a few hours for the more Asian audience, and Allela will definitely be there.
She will be there.
So we're kind of covering each other around the globe. So I hope that at least partially addresses your concern. And Allela was also in the Oceanographic 19, if I recall.
Yes, yeah, I think she's a key person, and if she's joining the next call, then that's great.
Yeah. Thank you, Sophie. I think this is something that we can go back to perhaps on Wednesday for the Wednesday session. We have a session on Wednesday to synthesize and summarize our discussion for this working group, and this is something that we should discuss. Peter, you're raising your hand.
Oh, no, I was just gonna suggest that you maybe explain now how the next sessions, the one of tomorrow, the one of Wednesday, and then the plenary on Friday will go in terms of our working group.
Right. So tomorrow we will have the another session. This is 10 o'clock Manila time. So I'm sorry, 0200 UTC, I think. But yeah, we are going to have another 1.5 session, and I'm going to give an overview and a briefing of perhaps a summary of what we've discussed today, and hopefully we'll get something from tomorrow's session as well. And on Wednesday, at the same time, 10 o'clock. I'm sorry that I'm saying my my own time zone. But on Wednesday we have another session, and this is the summary session. We're going to try to synthesize and summarize our discussions from the first two sessions, and come up with recommendations to the OBPS group, and also discuss some of the what Sophie raised earlier, because there are other side questions that we need to address to be able to come up with recommendations to the group. And then in the plenary, I think that on Thursday is an offline session. We hope to prepare our report in PowerPoint for the plenary on Friday. And the plenary on Friday, they have 2 instances. I think the first one is at 14:30 UTC, and the second one is 01:30 UTC. So you can attend any of these 2 plenary sessions, wherein each of the working group are going to give summary of their recommendations. And then on the 30th, I think that there would be the mini plenary for the final discussion and reporting. So I think that some of you will still be joining us next. I saw some of you in the list for tomorrow's session. But if you cannot make it tomorrow in Asian time, we hope to see you again on Wednesday, so that we can pick up some of the remaining questions here.
Johanna, do you want to make a group photograph now?
Oh yes, please, if you can. Sorry.
So if you can remove the screen sharing, and then everybody turns on their cameras.
And hold on. Is my video working? Yes. Okay. Are we all here? Great. Smile.
Smile. Now everybody wave. That's it.
All right.
All done.
Thank you very much for staying 30 minutes over time. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you.
Is Raja raising her hand? Do you have anything to say, Raja? Or it's just a mistake? Okay. All right, then. Thank you, everyone. See you at the next
Johanna.
session.
Peter, how is your questionnaire going? Is it advancing?
You mean the CD survey?
Yeah.
Oh,